Thank you very much. So, good morning. Good morning. Happy 4th of July. Day after 4th of July, I guess. Independence weekend. We're going to talk about independence in a way here today. The title to this morning's talk is Into the Mystic, a Path to Engaged Mysticism. When you hear the word mysticism, do you get a little wobbly? Does it concern you? Has it ever concerned you? Like, you know, we think about mystics, and we're going to talk about the history of mysticism and where it came from, specifically the history of Christian mysticism. As y'all probably know, there are all forms of mysticism, and we don't have time this morning to go into all of them. So the conversation is going to stay focused on Christian mysticism, how it came to be, what it is, why people have been freaked out about it from time to time, and actually what Unity believes about it. Chances are good that if you're in this room, you probably have mystic tendencies you may or may not know about. Chances are, if you've been attending Unity for a while, at least long enough to have learned the 5 principles, and you still choose to attend Unity after learning the 5 principles, you might be a mystic. Chances are pretty good. So, what is a mystic? The definition of a mystic has changed over the course of time quite a bit. But it's really slowly how it came to change. The actual word mystic derives from a Greek word that means I conceal. Think about that for just a moment. A mystic conceals. There's a derivative form of the word mystic. It's called mystikos, and it refers to an initiate. So in the beginning, in the early Christian period, a mystikos was an initiate into a body of knowledge that he intended to conceal. So that gave it this aura of secrecy. Within the context of mysticism at the time, the only place that was authorized to engage in mystical practices was in the context of the church, specifically for biblical, liturgical, spiritual, or contemplative purposes. So the church controlled all the mysticism. Said who was going to be the mystics. They would cloister these guys away in abbeys and monasteries, and they would go do their mystic practices that they intended to conceal and keep secret. So what was the secret? What were they concealing? We'll get to that in just a little bit. But once again, if you're a Unity person, you already know exactly what they were concealing. So we move forward in time from 300 to 400 period, when the church was first forming, all the way through to the end of the Middle Ages, which roughly coincides with the fall of Constantinople in 1453. Why the fall of Constantinople? Because that marked historically the end of the Roman Empire, which had held sway and influence for 1,500 years up until that point in time. So that was kind of a demarcation line right there. 17 years before the fall of that, Gutenberg released a printing press, and where they start printing up Bibles. So this information, this knowledge that had been preserved and kind of kept cloistered up within the confines of the church began to make its way out, right? So between 1453 and roughly about 1800, we go through the Renaissance period, the Age of Enlightenment, the Age of Reason. Columbus discovers America, and we discover the world isn't flat. That's only a little over 500 years ago, folks. We can't get too cocky about how much we've evolved when 500 years ago we believed the world was flat. Just think about it. So we go through those things. The Protestant Reformation. Martin Luther starts the Protestant Reformation, which is a break away from the Catholic Church. Keep in mind that up until the Protestant Reformation, what we call Christianity was really Catholicism. There weren't really any opposing churches. It was the Catholic Church that was cloistering these guys away in abbeys and everything. Any practice of mysticism during that period that wasn't sanctioned or run through the church was branded occult. And just the brand of occultism outside the confines of the church was enough to keep the rank and file kind of in check. They wouldn't go check it out because it was occultist, right? Once again, what are they concealing? So we move forward to the age of reason. And about the age of reason is also the age of revolution, right? All of a sudden there's revolutions happening everywhere, including here in America, which we celebrated yesterday, the Declaration of our Independence, which was part of that evolution. So what's happening? The old structures are breaking down, right? We're forming new structures. And as we go through this arc, we start getting to a point to where the individual human being starts becoming of importance. That roughly coincides with around 1800 with the dawn of the Romantic era. And then individual expression became important. So where's mysticism in all of this, right? So we said back in the early times, the definition of mysticism was any kind of practice that was biblical, liturgical, spiritual, or contemplative, and was run by the church, basically, right? So as we move on, during that period of the 1450 to 1800 period, the definition of mysticism got appended just a little bit, got amended to also include extraordinary experiences and altered states of mind. This was also enough to keep the rank and file in check because extraordinary experiences and altered states of mind, oh my God, that's potentially dangerous. So I'm not going to check that out. So it kept everybody kind of in line from looking into what mysticism. Now we're approaching 1,500 years or so that they've been concealing what's behind this mystical practice, right? So now we get into the 1800s, which not coincidentally is the century in which unity and new thought and everything began to emerge in the wake of the Romantic era and the work of Ralph Waldo Emerson, transcendentalists and so forth. And what's coming about is the awareness that what the mystical practice is really all about is to have a direct experience of our union with God, that there is no separation. A direct experience. So the old definitions went out the window, including the altered states of mind thing. And so mysticism was any activity that would cause you to have an experience of your fundamental union with God. That included hallucinogenics. That included extreme practices. You know, in the Sufi traditions, we've heard of the whirling dervishes, right? That's what they do. They just spin themselves into a state of ecstasy. You know, Native Americans, we come to find, they had all kinds of rituals and so forth in which they communicate with the Spirit. So these are becoming more and more accepted as we went along, but not entirely accepted. In fact, the Protestants, as they broke away from the Catholic Church, had quite a resistance to mystical practices. Remember Salem witch trials? Yeah, so we didn't really take real kindly to anyone who wanted to have a direct experience of God. The institutions wanted to make us believe that there was an intermediary that was necessary for us to commune with God. So now we've moved forward about 1,600 years to finally find out that what they were attempting to conceal was the fact that you, me, any of us, any of those people that lived back in those times, could, of their own ability and willingness, have a direct experience of God. And that's not that radical, is it? Isn't that what Jesus told us? But 300 or 400 years later, they chose to conceal that aspect in the promotion of the Christian church. So no wonder mysticism has got kind of a confused, kind of bad rap over the course of time, and people are confused about it. Except us, of course, right? We're mystics, we're unity people, we know all about that, right? So I'm really preaching to the choir right now, right? This is just a refresher course for us all here. So what does unity say about mysticism, or the tenets of mysticism? Okay? Unity principle number one. There is only one power and one presence in the universe and in my life. God the good. We assign some other characteristics to him. Omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence. If God is everywhere present, then there is no place that I can be, there's no place that you can be where God is not, right? Isn't that the very tenet of mysticism? I'm already in the presence of God. All I need to do is turn my attention to that awareness. And how simple is that? I can go to a mountaintop in Tibet to experience God, for God is there. You know, I can go do charity service work at any number of locations around the globe that need help, and I will find God there. I can also find God when I'm alone with my guitar in my hand. There's all kinds of places. In fact, there is no place that I can be where God is not present. So what's the big deal? Why did they conceal that? Why do they conceal that? Sort of. Because we're with unity people. Everybody knows the answer to that. Because it keeps us away from our own power. So unity principle number 2 says what? God created me, created you, in his image and likeness. And since God is everywhere present, then whatever he created me from and of and everything also includes God. Once again, no separation between me and God, regardless of what I believe. And I have believed that I was separate from God. Is anybody else, am I the only one in the room that has believed that they were separate? Okay, good, I'm not alone. The rest of you who didn't raise your hand, I want to talk to you after and I want to know about your experience of having lived with no separation ever. Right, born in unity. There's a song right there. There's your hook line right there. Listen. So what about that? There's no separation. That's like the primary tenet of mysticism, isn't it? If we believe those two principles, then we've already declared that we're mystic. We've already declared that this is a mystical experience. But do we approach that experience? Do we keep maintaining an awareness in our consciousness about how mystical that is on a day in, day out basis? We might have our prayer time, our meditation time and so forth, where we put aside, we do our 30 minutes or our hour or whatever, little meditation times throughout the day and little nooks and crannies of our life activity and so forth. But are we carrying that awareness with us when we leave our meditation and we move about the rest of the activity? Do we continue to maintain a conscious, active awareness of our indwelling Christ nature, of our fundamental union with God? That's the trick, because one of the things about mysticism has been that mystics would symbolically sort of withdraw from the world, right? Okay, so if you're somebody who loves the world, who loves the activity of the world, loves the family and loves going around and everything, cloistering yourself away in a monastery somewhere would seem like an extreme practice, wouldn't it? An extreme exercise, an altered state of mind. Remember that part of the definition? Okay, so we let that kind of go, because now we're right down here in the normal, day in, day out, living, breathing act, right? That's our lives. That's where we live. Unity principle number 3 says what? I create my experience through the activity of my thoughts and my feelings. It's not just the thoughts and the feelings that are rolling around. We decide and we choose which ones we're going to focus on, don't we? That's what Unity Principle 3 number says, right? So if I'm choosing which ones I focus on, regardless of which ones are rolling around in the activity of my consciousness, if I choose ideas and false beliefs about separation, guess what? I'm going to experience feelings of separation, aren't I? Conversely, if I cultivate thoughts of my union with God, my fundamental oneness with God, my indwelling Christ, then I'm going to experience the consequences of those choices and those feelings. So we are, I dare say, in control. We've already thrown that word around once today. But we are responsible for the executive management of that. That is where we exercise our free will, is in what thoughts we are going to focus on and what direction we're going to move it in. That's really about the only place that we can actually exercise our free will, because we're going to follow the thoughts that we hold in mind, right? Right, so once again, here's the activity, and that activity is going on where? Is it separate from the presence of God or right in the midst of the presence of God? It's right in the midst of the presence of God. But how many times have we thought that we could take our thoughts and we could go over to the corner and tuck ourselves away just a little bit, and maybe we could hide ourselves from God and he wouldn't hear that part. Done that, haven't we? But we can't, because there is nowhere that we can be that God is not. No separation. So unity principle number 3 continues to underscore this theme of mysticism. Now, at that point of our thoughts, that's where we choose to engage or withdraw. Engage or withdraw. We're going to choose that through the exercise of our free will. But which direction, what are we going to engage when we choose to engage, and what are we going to withdraw from? That's always the crossroads, isn't it? That's always the nexus point of the exercise of our free will. So we need some guidance, don't we? So where are we going to get that guidance? Well, God's everywhere present. I could ask him, but I can't necessarily see him. Unity principle number 4, what do? We connect with our indwelling Christ. We connect with our God nature in silent meditation and affirmative prayer. That's where we sort of get our guidance. But you ever really thought about it, that in a mystical experience, if I want to have a direct experience of God, I can't really come to God with a long list of petitions. God, I need you to do this, and God, I need you to do that, and please take care of that. And oh, while you're at it, if you could schedule a vacation 6 weeks from now, that'd be good too. We can't really come to him with praise. Who knows Joel Goldsmith? Anybody read any of Joel Goldsmith? In his book, The Heart of Mysticism, which was a collection of his Infinite Ways letters, he says that in the meditative practice, that the connection with the Christ within, just simply that act of connecting with the Christ within, that once we have achieved that, the meditation's over. There is nothing else to discover through any kind of mystical practice or meditative practice than the awareness of your connection and fundamental union with God. Your indwelling Christ is the contact point at which you do that, at which you receive that information. But once you've connected with that, there's nothing else to do. Now, you can repeat that activity, and should repeat that activity over the course of your days and months and years and the course of your life and everything, to continue to remind us that we are, in fact, united with God, because we are recalcitrant beings. The Bible will tell you that the closer we get to God, as soon as we get close to God and He reestablishes everything, we start moving away again. And history repeats over and over and over about how we do that, which is why we need to continue to actively, on an ongoing basis, engage with our Christ nature and remind ourselves that we are and connect with it. Because if not, we will forget. We will become distracted with all the shiny objects in the world. There's a bunch of them to choose from, and a lot of them are pleasant, quite frankly. You know, there's a lot of potential distractions in the world, and some of them are quite pleasing. So, we connect with our Christ. Now, unity principle number 1, there's only one power and one presence in the universe and in my life, God, and that power is absolutely good. Unity principle number 2, there's a spark of divinity within me, within you, because we were created in the image and likeness of God. There is no separation between us and God. Through the thoughts and feelings, the activities of our mind, that's how we create our experience, how we're going to go through the experience. And unity principle number 4, we connect with our divine indwelling Christ in silent meditation and affirmative prayer. Those 4 are not activities. They are principles. And so we have unity principle number 5, my favorite, which basically says that unity principles number 1, 2, 3, and 4 don't mean anything unless I am willing to take action and live the truth that I know. This is where I get the idea of the engaged mystic from. We've already established here at Unity that we're mystics, right? Because we want to have direct experience with God. That's really the only thing that qualifies you to be a mystic, that needs to be. Charles and Unity have sort of amended that idea of any activity that leads to union with God. And Unity and New Thought kind of amended that idea to include for the purpose of human transformation. That we connect with our indwelling Christ, we connect with these principles and live these principles for the purpose of human transformation, not just because we want to connect. once again, engaged mysticism. Now let me ask you, as we get ready to go into meditation here in just a moment, in the world, if I want to be a mystic and have my direct experience with God, if I just do it, part of the problem with people with mystics along the way was that they believed that mystics do nothing all day long. They just go on the top of a mountain top and just, look at the view and pray and praise God and everything. Or they spend their time down at the seashore counting waves, That would be fun, right? Just to spend the day counting waves. Then at night when you couldn't see the waves anymore, you could just sit there and count stars. But in our world of activity, it's sort of frowned upon to not do something to help the collective good when you're capable of doing so. So once again, mystics are kind of shunned, and they're kind of out on the lunatic fringe a little bit, along with the conspiracy theorists, So, not too many mainstream people want to invite mystics to their cocktail parties. So it's a curious balance, though. But I tell you, folks, I've been studying unity. It took me about 7 years to complete the curriculums to wind up with a licensed unity teacher certification and so forth. And along the way, I was changed by that study. Because when I began that study, I still had ideas of separation. I still had issues with God. And I don't know why this is working the way it's working. It doesn't make any sense. For me, I had to have a rational explanation. For the rational explanation to stick, I had to be willing to let go of my old conceptions, which I already knew were going to lead me down a blind alley. Right? Been there? In that moment when you're at your lowest, at your bottom, and you're crying out, God, please help me. What are we asking for? Help me unwind all this stuff I have created. It's a mess and I need help. Right? But we don't ever really do that until we've gotten to that crisis point. So I'm asking you all, I'm asking myself, I'm speaking to myself too, because I'm speaking to y'all about engaged mysticism because that's what I'm attempting to learn in my own life. Because I'm not one of these blissed out guys. I'm going to do the meditation here in a moment. I hope I say something that makes sense and makes you feel good. But I'm not really one of those guys that does the bliss out thing, because I want to be engaged with the world. It doesn't feel right to me to gain all this knowledge and then withhold it from the world, to conceal it from the world like the initial mystics did. I want to tell everybody about it. And I believe that Unity and other New Thought churches, that not only do we are cultivating that awareness within our own selves and helping one another to remind that that's what the activity of your life is about, but man, the world needs our point of view. And part of the idea of engaged mysticism, which I'm going to be continuing to work out in my own processes and everything, is how to speak the truth that I know, the truth that I've learned at Unity, the truth that has healed me, the truth that has helped me find any measure of personal peace of mind in my life, because I guarantee I did not find it in the other avenues. I only found it here. So now that I've found it, I know that it works for me. I know I was a rebel. I was a devil's advocate. I debunked the Bible. I did all those kinds of things growing up. I was agnostic. I don't think I was ever actually atheist. But let me say something about atheism for a second. Do you know what a theist is? A theist is someone who believes in an external God. A theist is someone who believes in an external God. An atheist is someone who does not believe in an external God. Now think about that for just a moment. Think about what we believe about God. So in a certain sense, at a strict definition of the word, Unity people, New Thought people are probably atheists because we don't believe in an external God. It's not the same energy as what we know as atheism, which they're trying to just disprove. Not only do they not believe in it, but they spend a lot of energy trying to disprove. Wow. It takes a lot of energy to do that, right? To prove a negative. How do you do that? Mathematicians have been trying to figure that out for a long time. So as we conclude here and get ready to take ourselves into meditation time, think to yourself, just survey your own experience and think to yourself about how have you been? How are you doing in terms of, am I passive? Am I active? Am I engaging the world with what I know? Am I just doing it for my own purpose and kind of going through? And then when the conversation turns to spirituality, I kind of keep my thoughts to myself when I'm in company of my mainstream Jesus saves friends. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because I will tell you, Jesus saved me. Not in the same sense as what my mainstream and fundamentalist friends believe, but he did. Because the one constant in my whole life, even when I was debunking Christianity and trying to find my place and everything, was I had a healthy respect for Jesus. When I did read the Bible during those years, the only parts I read were the Gospels, and the only parts of those I read were the words in red. Because why? I wanted a direct experience. I'll read what Jesus said, and I'll make up my own mind what it means to me. And that's what we do here in Unity. We look at it as a metaphysical thing. We look for the deeper meaning, don't we? Well, that's what I'm going to ask you all to consider today as we move into the meditation, as we move back into our lives after today and go through our week and everything. I want you all to think about this for a second. Where do you stand? The world needs what we're learning here. The world needs what we're waking up to. And it is an ongoing awakening, folks. We don't just get the light turned on one time and then it sticks forever. Because the light bulb's going to burn out at some point in time and we got to go replace it. And, you know, if we didn't pay the electricity bill, then we don't have electricity to burn the light. So we got to deal with that, right? So stay engaged. I'm going to encourage you to do it because I can guarantee you, we know that we can do better than what we're doing. No matter how good we think we're doing, no matter how far we think we've come, there is more that we can do, way more than we can do. But it's good to know that when we're doing what we're doing, we're not alone. It's not I that does the work, but the Christ within that does the work. My job is just to be willing to let it show. Yes. What a sweet, sweet space we have here today. I just invite you now to continue relaxing and to let go of any remnants, any thoughts, to-do list items, activities outside of this building, outside of this space right now. Just let them all go for a little bit. We'll be able to pick them up here in a little while. Just let them go. I'm going to breathing in, breathing out at your own comfortable rhythm. I invite you to hold the in-breath just a little bit before letting it go. And then on the exhale, let it go way past the point you normally would. Just empty yourself of everything. There's nothing to do right now except be right here, right now. Feel your seat supporting you. And just allow yourself to relax into it. Just gently release any tension in any parts of your body. Just let it go. There's nothing to do. And in this space, you can allow your focus to just gently, gently move in the direction of your own indwelling Christ. Making a decision to connect right now, right here, with your own indwelling Christ presence. That is the only purpose here. There are no petitions. There's nothing you need to do except wait for the revealing of your own Christ presence right here, right now, and to sit sweetly with it, allowing it to lead you, being open and willing to hear and to listen for whatever it might offer you. Let go of any need on your part to ask anything, for your own indwelling Christ knows precisely what you need to hear and how to say it in a way that you will hear it. So as we prepare ourselves to go into the silence and commune, let us be aware that our indwelling Christ is our contact point, the point where we become aware of our fundamental union with God. Once this is achieved, once this awareness is brought into our consciousness, our meditation is complete. So now we move into the silence and we hold these thoughts and we wait for the revelation of the indwelling Christ in the silence. Sweet, living, loving Spirit, the word of truth resides within each one of us, and we are grateful that it is so. We thank you for placing the indwelling Christ right within our own beings, at the very ground of our being, so that we can connect and know that we are connected directly with you, have always been so, and will always be so. We are grateful for this truth, and we allow it to infuse every part of our being, to inspire the activity of our thoughts and our actions in the world. We carry the awareness in our consciousness of our own Christ nature, and we make ourselves ready, willing, and available to do your purpose here on the world. We thank you, we thank you, we thank you. In the name and the nature of Jesus Christ, we say, Amen.